another episode for the boys, round 7. I want to ask you a question, and I want you to answer it honestly. Just to yourself, of course. If something bad happened tonight, something genuinely bad, who would you call? Not who would you text to coordinate logistics like family. Not the guy you golf with on Saturdays. Not your brother, if calling him would feel like an emergency rather than a conversation. Who would you call at 10 at night just to be heard? Do you have someone? If you struggle to come up with a name, or you came up with one and then you realize you've not actually called that person in a year or 2 or 5, you're not unusual. This is really common, and it's what we're going to talk about today. You're statistically average for a man in your demographic. And it's one of the most quietly catastrophic features of male life in our country. And it's the topic of today's episode. We are going to pull back the threads on male loneliness and lack of friendships. Why this has happened, why this happens all the time. Welcome back to Pulling Threads. I'm Leslie, a therapist, a coach, among many other things. This is for the boys, episode 7. I've been threading the friendship question through almost every episode of this playlist without ever really making it a specific subject. But I've been really curious about this, so I've been doing some deep diving. I named this in episode 1 when I told you that divorced men are statistically lonelier than widowed men, and that they're lonelier than divorced women, and that the reason has nothing to do with caring less. I named it in episode 2 when I talked about why a man's nervous system cannot survive on a single romantic partner as its only emotional connection. I named it last week in episode 6 when I told you about telling one friend the actual thing being part of how the anger underneath the anger gets a different exit strategy. Today, in this episode, where I look at it directly, we are going to narrow in a little bit more. Because for most of you, or for most men that have a low number of friends or go-to people, this is the missing piece. Not the dating piece, not the regulation piece, the friendship piece, which is so important for all of us, but very important for men and difficult for them. It wasn't until I met my boyfriend, who moved to Tampa 7 years ago and has almost no friends, really no guy friends here, that I realized this was such an issue. I had no idea how hard it was for men to connect when they move. It's one thing to have your guys, like he's got his friends back home and he's got his brothers and he's got even work friends, but he travels for work. So here in the city he's lived in for 7 years, he has no male friends. So let's start with the facts, because they're harder than most men are aware of, definitely harder than what I was aware of. Studies over the last 2 decades have tracked a steady, alarming decline in male friendships in this country. In one widely cited survey, around 15% of American men said they had no close friends at all. That's a 5-fold increase from a similar survey 30 years earlier. About 1 in 4 men reported they didn't have a single friend they could lean on for personal support. Remember, we're not talking about brothers, coworkers. The numbers that we're talking about climb as men age. They climb again after marriage, more after fatherhood, even more after divorce, and again after retirement. A man in his 50s is more isolated than a man in his 20s. It makes sense. More isolated than his mother was at the same age he is, more isolated than nearly any other demographic the researchers have looked at. So, in my opinion, this means men around the age of 50 are high risk for lots of things because when we don't have a support system, we don't have friends, we are high risk. Companionship in many forms is necessary for us as humans to exist in a healthy way. So, the consequences are not abstract. The same body of research that tells us social isolation is linked to higher rates of heart disease, depression, anxiety, addiction, and earlier death is the body of research that finds men in this demographic at the top of nearly every one of those curves. So, again, men around the age of 50 are at high risk. Midlife male suicide rates are among the highest in this country. And the clinicians who work in that area will tell you with near unanimous voice that the friend problem is one of the load-bearing causes. So why are you here? Why does a man of 45 or 55 wake up one day and realize he doesn't have a single person he could call? We're going to get to the honest answer. It's not because they're bad friends, not because they don't care. It's because no one ever taught you, or most men, the architecture of friendship after 22. And the architecture you inherited has a fatal flaw built into it. First, let me explain the flaw, because once you see it, you can't really unsee it. And I would venture to say that most people have never looked, so they've never seen it. Most men's friendships, by the time they reach midlife, are organized around what I will call activity scaffolding. You're friends with someone because you both play golf. You're friends with someone because you work together. You're friends with someone because your kids are on the same team or they're friends at school. The friendship is held together by a shared activity. The activity is the architecture. And when the activity ends, you change jobs. The kids age out. You change jobs. The kids age out. You hurt your back and stop playing. The friendship ends with it, almost without anybody noticing it ended. There was never a separate connection underneath the activity. The activity was the connection. Now compare this, with no judgment, to how women in this demographic tend to build friendships. Women's friendships are organized around what we would call disclosure scaffolding. The reason two women are friends is that they have, over time, told each other things. The friendship is not held together by what they do, it's held together by what they have said. So when a woman changes jobs, or the kids age out, or the kids are no longer friends with one another, the friendship doesn't end because the disclosure was the connection and the disclosure continues. Her friendships are more portable than yours. Yours, by and large, were not. This isn't an indictment. It's an architecture problem. You were taught one kind of building, and the kind you were taught only holds up while the scaffolding is in place. When life kicks the scaffolding out, and divorce is one of the most efficient scaffolding removers in the human catalog, the friendship disappears with it, often within months. And the man is left at 50, looking around at a life he thought was full of friends and realizing he was sharing activities with men he didn't actually know. There's a second layer that I have to name, and I'm going to name it with lots and lots of respect. The culture you were raised in did not give you as a man full permission to engage in disclosure with another man. Now, that is not as true for younger men. And I've witnessed this with my own son, who's 28. But interestingly, I've also witnessed this on the golf course. So if you play golf, you know that if you go out as a twosome, you often get paired up with other people. And for whatever reason, Frank and I are often paired up with young 20s, early 30s-year-old men. Like, I feel like every time. I have witnessed on more than one occasion or overheard the young men in their, I would say, late 20s, in the golf cart behind me, talking about relationships and really being vulnerable with one another. That's very cool. I'm not sure if that's generational. I don't think there's a study out for that yet, but it'll be interesting to see if their friend dynamics at 50 are different than men that are 50 right now. But we're talking about men who are in the 40s, 50s, and 60s range for this episode. So the culture those men were raised in didn't give them full permission to engage in disclosure with another man. You were given a different script. Be loyal, be dependable, show up, do not whine, and don't bring your problems to other men. And the men around you operated the same script. So when you violated it, say by telling another man you were struggling, you could have risked something. This is obviously not true for everyone. I definitely, in witnessing male friendships amongst my ex-husband, amongst my boyfriend now, I would say there are people who do show up in a more disclosure type way, especially with my boyfriend. He has a couple friends who come to him, but I wouldn't say he's necessarily going to them. And I see this in him a lot. If you do get vulnerable with friends for men in this age group, you may risk some discomfort. You might be risk like being seen as weak or changing the dynamic in a way that no one in the group has ever really signed up for, especially if you have a friend group where everyone is meeting up together with, 3 or 4 men. This is going to be probably pretty risky to be vulnerable in that situation. So when men talk about sport, you know, maybe they talk about escapades with women, but not in a vulnerable way. So most men are just not going to violate the script. The script has been honored, the activities continue, the conversations stay surface, and nobody notices how thin the connections really are because everyone is operating by the same code. Now, I will say there are similar friendships amongst women, definitely, even amongst mom group women. I think we're seeing some mom group drama play out online right now. And those types of very superficial relationships where people are friends because their kids go to school together or on the same team are not always going to end up being close friendships. And I can say I have had all of these different types of friends, but within each group, my son's old soccer team, my daughter's friend group, my younger son's friend group, I have mom friends from those groups of people who are very close friends, and our kids aren't even friends anymore, and we've maintained the friendship. That's just, and those are going to be friends that'll be mine forever, right? The people that I went to law school with, a lot of those friendships faded away with the exception of a couple. Friends from my speech pathology, friends who were college friends, I've held on to a couple very closely. A lot of them went away. So I don't want to suggest that women only form these tight friendships. They also have the more superficial. Then comes a divorce. And the woman who had functioned, often without you really realizing it, as the one person you actually did disclose to, the one whose presence was the entire emotional infrastructure of your adult life. I know men don't like me saying that. They didn't like it when I did the loneliness episode, but it is what happens. When that woman walks out the door or you walk out the door from her, And then you go to reach for the phone. Many times that's when people realize that there's no one to call. And that does happen often in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. This isn't because the men in your life didn't care about you, because the friendship structure you had built with them did not have a channel for what you needed to say. It was built on something else, on another channel. So what do? There are three things. I always give you answers in these episodes, and the order matters. And for anyone listening who has other ideas, please, please, please put them in the comments. But first, give up on the idea that the friendship that you need is going to arrive accidentally. It's not. The men who eventually build real friendships in midlife are almost without exception men who decided to build them on purpose. The friendships do not happen as a byproduct of any activity anymore. The friendships have to be intentional, almost like construction projects, like a house. You pick up the materials and you build it together. Secondly, choose the disclosure on purpose. Once a week, once a month, with one man, not all of them, not a group, one man. Tell him something true that would not normally be something that you would tell him. It doesn't have to be the worst thing in your life. You don't have to disclose all the terrible things you've done, if there are any. But choose something more vulnerable to share. Just a thing that's slightly more honest than your default. If he meets you, you've started something. If he flinches, it's information about him, not about you. And then you find someone else. Most men, in my experience, do not flinch, even though you think they're going to. They've been waiting for someone to go first. They're just not going to be the one to do it because it's scary. I know you don't want to hear that word either, but it's true. It's really hard to be vulnerable, put yourself out there with other men. Third, find or build a structure that does the work for you. This would be a men's group, a small recovery community, a regular dinner, like with 3 other guys, with a rule that you talk about the actual thing for the first half hour. The reason that structures work is that they remove the moment of decision. You don't have to decide each week whether to be vulnerable because the structure decides for you. That's why so many people find this person in groups like AA. Men in your demographic who join these structures and stay for a year almost universally describe them as one of the most stabilizing things they ever did. Men who try them once and quit usually do so because they couldn't get past the first hour of discomfort. This is not an environment you're used to being in. The discomfort is the price of admission, though. The friendship is on the other side of it. So this is going to take some bravery if it's something that you're struggling with. I want to say one last thing, and it is the part most of you are not going to want to hear. The work I'm describing is the most important non-romantic relational work you'll ever do in your life. You need friends. Because the next woman, if you keep looking for a next woman without doing this work, is going to find herself in exactly the position your wife was in. The only person you tell the truth to. Only relationship that carries your interior life. The whole emotional infrastructure of an adult man riding on her shoulders. It's too heavy for one person. It was too heavy when your wife was carrying it, even though she did it maybe for years without complaining. And it'll be too heavy for whoever comes next. The way you avoid putting that weight on someone else is not by ignoring it. It's by building the friendship architecture that should have been there the whole time. It's not your fault that it's not there, so I hope I'm not coming off that way. This is a culture problem we have, right? It's something we just don't teach people. We definitely do not teach boys. Our boys have so much to learn on their own. And if they don't, then they don't figure it out until they're men and they're lonely. The men who do this work, though, end up with marriages and relationships that are sustainable. The men who don't end up cycling through women who keep leaving them for the same reason. But you don't have to be alone. You were just never given the right blueprint. And I'm giving it to you. Here it is. And you can start building when you're ready. If you want to keep going with this work or you want to talk more about it, I'm at theloomlife.com. The link to book a discovery call is in the show notes. If you're in the Florida, you can look at Loom Life Therapy. So please, please, please tell me if you went looking for someone to call at 10 tonight and who came to mind, or if no one did. Other men are reading. The men with no one to call need to know that they're not alone. If this has been you in the past and you have figured it out, I would love to hear what worked for you in meeting people. This was Pulling Threads. I'm Leslie. Take care of yourselves out there.